right, joining me now to break down some best bets for week 4 of the NFL season and to discuss some of the top storylines of the week is our guy from the 3 and Out podcast, John Middlekauff. John, how are you making out today?
I'm doing good. How are you? It's funny how when a good primetime game will put a smile on your face. It really will.
It fires you up. Yeah, a couple of the Sunday nighters have been absolute stinkers, but that game on Monday night between the Lions and Ravens, kind of an all-timer. So let's start there. I think you could call that the most impressive win of the Dan Campbell era. And a big concern about the Lions coming into the season was losing both coordinators, most notably Ben Johnson. Can you put that concern to bed after they scored 90 points over their last 2 games?
Well, I mean, he had a Ben Johnson-like performance last night against the Ravens. And I've been calling Dan Campbell the third Harbaugh brother for a long time. You know, he likes tough guys. He loves the line of scrimmage. He's just kind of crazy. I mean, to me, he'd fit right in on that family. If you said he was a son of Jack Harbaugh, I don't think anyone wouldn't believe you. And they out-Ravened the Ravens because they dominated the line of scrimmage. And like you said, I didn't have as much concern about Kelvin Shepard taking over the defense. Former player, had been a position coach, and had a front row seat for Aaron Glenn for a long time. I just think we've all seen offensive coordinators change. And especially, you know, I know Johnny Morton had been there in 22, but he had been gone. He hadn't been really a coordinator. You just never know. We see often like, oh, this guy, former quarterback, or this guy, or that guy. And then like they just have no feel. I mean, look at Zach Robinson with the Falcons. I mean, he's terrible. And I think sometimes the blueprint's already set. Like Ben Johnson probably left his playbook. He called, I mean, the trick plays. And even when their trick plays don't work, I think part of Ben Johnson was, we're going to run a couple. And this has been a while now, but when Boise State really took off under Chris Peterson and became like a legit pre-NIL top 5-10 program in the country and was beaten, they would run multiple trick plays a game. And they were undermanned, right, when they were playing Georgia or Oregon. The Lions are loaded. And the one reason I liked them last night in the game, because a couple years ago, and I know the Ravens record speaks for itself, but that core group of guys, St. Brown, Gibbs, Laporta, you just go around their team. Put Sewell, Branch. Those guys are much older now, a couple years later, when they lost that game and kind of got dismantled by the Ravens. So you look and you go, well, I just think they got better players. And then if their offensive coordinator is going to call a good game, which what do the Harbaugh brothers do? They love to run the ball. And what did he do last night? Run. And it kind of wears you down. Now, listen, you lose your star defensive tackle and your stud pass rusher with the Ravens. I mean, Metabuke and Van Noy, I think I was looking last night, last year combined for like 40 quarterback hits, almost 20 sacks. I mean, those two guys are high-end players. But when you're missing those guys, football isn't that complicated. Attack. And that's what they did relentlessly. And here's the thing. You know, the Thunder and Lightning with Montgomery, and he's a physical back. Honestly, he feels a lot like a guy that would play for the Ravens over the years. I think Gibbs is an underrated physical back for being a quicker space player. How often was he lowering his shoulder last night, driving through guys? I mean, they just have a physical mentality on that team. And obviously it starts from their head coach, which has been like, they looked like the Ravens last night. That was the crazy thing. Like they were out-ravening the Ravens with like, we're going to bully you to death. Because the final score, 38-30, that does not reflect what I witnessed throughout the game.
Yeah, such a fun and easy team to get behind. I would absolutely love to see the Detroit Lions and Buffalo Bills in the Super Bowl this year. That's what I wanted to see last year. Both teams very likable, both very fun playing styles.
You know, the other thing, Joe, is, Lamar, in a weird way, had a bad game for his standards, but still, relative to the rest of the league, is way, people would die for that stat line. Most people, and I think this happens to Josh Allen, it happens anytime that you have a really dynamic quarterback. They just run up lanes because they're like, I'm going to sack this guy. And then they miss him, and he runs for 10 yards with his eyes closed. Last night, they truly, and I think Dan Campbell talked about like building a net. They were not out of control. Now, it doesn't mean you're going to miss him sometimes when you dive, but he's like, where am I going? He had nowhere to go. And I think it's easier said than done. You need athletic defensive linemen and linebackers, which the Lions have. But I do think they kind of showed like, you can't just let this guy run because then he dictates all the terms. In the first couple weeks, how many of those runs going back and forth, then he take off for 20 yards? That was just not happening last night.
Yeah, they did catch him from behind a couple of times. That was very frustrating. I had the Ravens going over their team total, which they did just barely, but that was a tough watch in the second half of the game. Okay, let's talk about Jalen Hurts and his MVP odds. I think I'm on a little bit of an island with this opinion, although some Eagles fans might agree with me. So I don't think it's fair that Hurts's success gets discounted because he has a lot of talent around him. In my opinion, what else more do you want the guy to do? He plays great situational football. He doesn't turn the ball over. He's great in big games. He's won a Super Bowl, of course. He's not a distraction off the field. He is the centerpiece of the most unstoppable play in football. But yet, you look at the MVP odds over at FanDuel, he's 22-1, currently 8th on the odds board behind the likes of Jordan Love and Jaden Daniels. I don't think that makes much sense. Do you think he should get more love when it comes to MVP consideration?
Well, I think we've been accustomed now over like the great dominant players at quarterback have unreal stats. And even Mahomes the last couple years, they've been in the Super Bowl 3 years in a row and they've won 2 of them. He hasn't had the best stats over that period of time, but we've already seen him throw for 50 touchdowns and win the MVP. So we know he has that. Like you watch Jalen, he feels like a guy, like he's going to end up, if I had to guess, he has 4 passing touchdowns right now, somewhere between 22 to 25 passing touchdowns, but he's going to have like 20 rushing touchdowns. But he doesn't get that much credit for those because I don't know what the final percentage will be. 75, 80% will be the tush push. So, part of it is the stats. And his stats, people are going to judge fairly or not. Like, well, a lot of these touchdowns, which are a huge part of anyone's argument, right? Josh Allen has had, I think the last game or Sunday Night Football week 1 was like, he's had 40 total touchdowns in like 5 straight seasons. But it feels like really hard to get, like he's making throwing touchdowns, he's running. And obviously Jalen has some fantastic runs for touchdowns. I do think the tush push would work against his ability to win the MVP. I mean, right now, I wouldn't, like you said, the odds, but if you were just put yourself in the mind of people that vote for this, I would say he wouldn't even be in anyone's top 3, right? I think Herbert would be universally 1 or 2. Baker has 3 comeback wins, and he already had a lot of momentum. He was actually, I think we had talked about it, one of my favorite bets as a quote-unquote long shot, 25-1, just because I was like, I think his team's going to win a lot, and his stats are going to be good. Now, from a touchdown standpoint, if they get healthier throughout the season, I think that will go up. But you have comeback wins. Part of it is like, well, they got Jordan Davis, they got Jalen Carter, they got Zach Bond. Their team is stacked, and he's just not going to. If you told me Jalen Hurts threw 40 touchdowns, I'd be like, yeah, it doesn't matter. He could be playing with the 2017 Warriors. He'd get all the credit. But I just think the running touchdowns, because of the tush push, he just doesn't get the same. Like last year, Saquon, remember, had like I think he had like 6 or 7 runs of over 60 yards, which was like an NFL record. So it wasn't like, well, he's just a great goal line back. No, it's like him and Derrick Henry too. They are busting these long runs. So we hold that to higher value when voting for like offensive player of the year or something.
Okay, next up, let's talk about maybe the biggest surprise of the season, Daniel Jones. Let's start with his old head coach, Brian Daboll. I feel as if Daboll is a guy who he kind of got a bit of a pass over his tenure now with the Giants, with Jones being used as a bit of a scapegoat. But here we have the Giants off to another bad start. Once again, they are 9-28 since the start of last season. Meanwhile, everyone can't wait to fire Mike McDaniel. He's had a lot more success than Brian Daboll has. Do you think the success of Daniel Jones now with the Colts is a bad reflection on Daboll and the Giants?
How about this? Did you see the comment from Saquon? He's like, no one I root for more than Daniel Jones. It's one thing when you cut a guy because he's an awful player, but it's easier when it's like, kind of a bad guy too. It's like, well, everyone loves this guy. I think in fairness, when the Giants cut him, he was a disaster over the course of the last couple of years. Like he was really, really playing bad. But that's part of a coach, especially an offensive head coach. So my first reaction when this conversation started kind of simmering was like, I don't know. And then the more and more it goes, you're like, you're telling me this guy's going to be the defensive or I mean, the offensive like comeback player of the year and lead this franchise. He's going to turn out to be the lifeline to two people who were going to get fired because their owner, who Ursay's daughter, has to go to meetings and go to the sideline to listen to what they're doing. Cause she's like, I don't know if they know what they're doing. And this guy's going to lead them. I mean, I would say right now, watching them play, offensively, they're pretty loaded. I mean, their running back, he's going to have an all-pro level season if this continues. He looks fantastic. Obviously, their weapons are pretty good. We know their coach. It goes back Shane Steichen coaching the Chargers with Herbert and Phillip Rivers to obviously Jalen Hurts. Like, he knows what he's – hell, they were – what was it, like a 4th and 4 away from beating the Texans to win the division with Gardner Minshew, Anthony Richardson's first year. So we know Shane Steichen, but if I'm John Mara or anyone associated with the Giants, well, aren't we paying Dayball to be like the Steichen, the Kevin O'Connell, the McVay, the LaFleur, Shanahan, like that mind? And it feels like he's more like tough guy, but I need some offensive creativity. Now, I think I saw – is Jackson Dart starting this week?
He is.
That's his lifeline, right? To separate from the conversation. If he looks good, that's his guy. But he better look good. Now it's going to be hard to look worse than Russell Wilson, but you never know. I mean, rookies. Peyton Manning, Troy Aikman. They were terrible as rookies, and it wasn't like, well, those guys were like 4-year starters in college, so it could get ugly. And he could go on to have a great career. Last I checked, the Giants, when was the last time they won? A decade ago? Like, they don't win many games.
Yeah.
They're typically down in games.
Yeah. 2 double-digit losses already this season. And the one, and they allowed, 48 points in Dallas, something crazy
I will say this for them. They do have good players, right? They have some really dynamic defensive players. I think if you gave any general manager the opportunity to say, would you rather have Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter today? I think it would be universal Abdul Carter. I mean, he looks like he's got a chance to be Micah Parsons 2.0. Burns looks good. And obviously offensively, I mean, Neighbors a stud. Scadaboo, I don't think that would translate necessarily in like 1993, but guys are much smaller now. Like, linebackers aren't 260 pounds. They're 230 pounds, 240 pounds. Safeties are smaller. So that physical presence, if he makes it past the defensive line, you can tell these DBs, these safeties, like, he can run through them. So he could add some juice. Jackson Dart started a lot of games in the SEC, playing a lot of NFL players. So I'm actually pretty bullish on the situation. I didn't quite understand putting him into the game like he's Lamar Jackson or Kyler Murray to run these like quarterback keeper, handout. Like, that's not Jackson Dart. He's a guy's a passer. Now he has mobility, but like, you wouldn't bring a backup if like Patrick Mahomes at 23 years old. If you're going to bring him in, let him run a pass play. I didn't understand what he was doing there.
Let him play quarterback. Okay, so Daniel Jones going in the right direction. CJ Stroud continues to go in the wrong direction. We saw him regress last season after a fantastic rookie season, and that regression has continued into this season. Texans 0-3 to start the year. Stroud, a lot of ugly passes, bad in some key moments. What the hell happened here? And do you think he can get back on track?
I looked earlier today, and they have 280 total rushing yards. The Lions had 250 last night. I think it's very, very difficult for any young quarterback when you basically have no running game. And then when you have no running game and your offensive line is not good in pass protection, like, I do think it goes back to Sam Darnold, like, I'm seeing ghosts, and he got made fun of a lot for that. I think he was basically saying a lot's happening. I got stuff in my face. I don't know where to go. And I feel like CJ Stroud kind of feels lost back there. And, he's not playing well. This isn't like an excuse for him. But I think everything around him, the offensive coordinator situation, feels like it's a duplicate of last year, just a new guy calling the plays. The offensive line looks awful. And clearly, and I understand Mixon's hurt, but they cannot run the ball. And when you don't have a running game and you can't pass protect, Eagle College is a good player, but Tank Dell shattered his leg. He's gone. It's not like they got Andre Johnson and, other guys out there. I mean, when I think of the Texans really in their heyday with like Kubiak and then even early on Bill O'Brien, they had a really good running game. And I think this team now wants to pass it all the time, but they don't have the ability to pass protect. And then their quarterback, clearly has lost his confidence. I'd say for most of his career, right, he was a great high school player. He goes to Ohio State. Like, he had better players than everyone else. And even early, a couple years ago, like, they had a pretty talented roster, right? I mean, with Laramie Tunzel, obviously with Nico and Tank Dell, it was like, God, they got some players. They got some foundational pieces. And then now you look like it's kind of worse off. Some of it's injuries, but which is sad because their defense is good. I know Stingley got banged up, but it's not like they're losing these games 30-0. You watching, and it's 7-7 or 10-7. You're like, they're not going to win. And that's where I always get worried about, a defense. Eventually, that's where bad teams can have really good defenses, but they're just like, what? We can't play like this for 17 games. So by the time you get to mid to late October, they kind of run out of juice because they're just always on the field. The Browns will eventually become that. Like, if you gave the Browns, a legitimate offense, they could win like 13 games. But it's like it's impossible to play like that all season long.
Yeah, maybe a good get-right spot for the Texans versus the Titans here this weekend. I was expecting more out of them. That is not the case. Okay, here's what I love about the NFL. Just when you think you know everything, everyone's in agreement in week 3 that the Green Bay Packers are a very serious team, a threat to go on a run here in the playoffs. They go into Cleveland, one of the biggest favorites of the week, and they end up losing the game outright. The defense played really good, not the case for the offense. Do you think that offense could hold them back a little bit? They got some good players. The wide receiving group, probably call them average. Jacobs is a good back. I think Jordan Love, probably in that second, third tier of quarterbacks. But do you think their offense could hold them back here a little bit, John?
I'm going to give them a little pass. And here's where I go. I do think Cleveland, which is used to having bad teams, is a tough place to play. And like I remember a couple years ago, the 49ers went in there, the team that went to the Super Bowl, and Cleveland just kind of out-physicaled them. I mean, you got those people banging on the tin siding of the stadium. Their defense is really good. They have a player who is an unstoppable force in Myles Garrett. I don't know if you saw that clip that came out. It kind of went viral of like Myles smokes the left tackle and he goes, "Run, Jordan, run!" And Myles was laughing about it. You can't block that guy. I mean, he's one of I think Kevin Stefanski called him like the defensive player of the year in perpetuity, and I don't necessarily disagree. So like, you're gonna be in an ugly game. Now I think what stinks is you're up 10-0 against Joe Flacco. You can't lose that game. I mean, that stretch where you go punt, then they kick a field goal, it's 10-3. Then Jordan Love, interceptions happen, mistakes happen, but like that pick in that moment cannot happen. The only way, it was like in the Bills game when Derrick Henry fumbled. Like last night, his fumble didn't dictate the outcome of the game. In the Bills game, it did. The only way the Bills could come back on that week 1 game was a turnover. The only way the Browns were going to have a chance to tie it, let alone win it, was a turnover. And he gave it right to him. He might as well just handed him the ball. And that was a killer. But listen, it's early in the season. You're playing. Again, if you gave, like, if the Bills could just take the Browns defense, they'd go 19-0. No one would even touch them. Like this is not like a pretty, like this is a early in the season when you still got some hope, an elite defense. But I just think that being up 10-0, you just kind of got to cruise to that win because Flacco can't beat you unless you do what they did. And then obviously what field goal block and, a team that can't make a kick makes a kick. But that's usually the way it happens, especially on the road. And I think there's probably a little bit of an element. I saw LaFleur reading our own press clippings about being undefeated and, running the table this year. Like that's sometimes a loss for a young squad. They have the youngest team in the league, I think, right? Them or the Rams is probably a healthy thing. But to me, there's also just a football thing with Jordan Love. And I was thinking about this. You and I, we like to gamble. Could you trust, they're a 13-win team playing the Eagles or the Rams on the road or at home, against like a healthy Stafford or a healthy Eagles and Jalen or a Goff? Do you trust Jordan Love? And the answer is going to be probably not really.
No.
It doesn't mean he can't win, but if you're laying your money and we know these playoff games are going to be small lines, like do you trust him in the biggest moment? No one argues he's got physical capabilities and, like you said, Tucker Crafts, I know he got banged up in practice a couple weeks ago, but talented player. Like they got enough, and they got the coaching. It's just the quarterback at any moment, if he just throws Like he can have like his Dak Prescott and Kirk Cousins moment. Like he's more physically gifted than those guys,
Yeah.
but he has some similarities to like what did I just witness Dak do? And I think Jordan's kind of, and that's where they got a little. They lived pretty well with Rodgers. I know he could drive you a little crazy in some of the big games. Over the course of his career, like the NFC Championship game, you'd want a little more. But for the most part, like there is a pretty big gap between what he was and probably what Jordan Love, even if he is a 10-year starter, is going to be, right?
Yeah, still a ways to go for Jordan Love. Okay, John, let's get into a couple of best bets. You have two of them, and then we're going to wrap things up with the biggest game of the week, Ravens in KC against the Chiefs. So let's start on Thursday night. We are in full agreement. This is one of my favorite bets of the week. The Seahawks are a plus 1.5 point underdog in Arizona against a Cardinals team that I think is a little bit fraudulent, and we both like the Seahawks here.
Yeah, I mean, I think two main things stand out. One, James Conner being hurt, which was an awful injury, is a big blow for them. I mean, he kind of settles that thing down over the course of the last couple of years. He's become a really solid player, and obviously he's out for the season. And Marvin Harrison, I think we have to ask the question, like, is he good? Which is crazy to say because everyone told me 2 years ago he was can't miss. Kyler doesn't like throwing in the ball. Kyler doesn't trust him. So, and listen, Kyler can drive you nuts a little bit too. I actually came watching that 49er game like, Kyler, is he perfect? Is he probably a top 10 quarterback? No, but he's better than more than half the league. And you can function with him. But offensively, they do struggle. And I think Seattle defensively, I think what the crowning achievement for the Ravens that they don't get any credit is like Andy Reid and the Shanahan family, like their coaching tree. The Ravens organization produces, I mean, Jesse Minter right now for the Chargers and Mike McDonald, they are just unreal defensive coaches. And the defensive team speed Seattle has, I mean, they've got to be kicking themselves over that week 1 loss when Sam Darnold fumbled the ball. He's got to be like, God, Bosa's now out for the year. He was the reason that happened. I think Seattle's good. I picked them to win the division at the beginning of the year. I'm not just like going to write it off just because they lost, very close game to the 49. I just think they're better. And Sam Darnold is made for this scheme, right? It's a very quarterback-friendly offense. It uses his athleticism. Running the ball in defense is a huge part of anyone from the Ravens mentality. And, I just think Seattle's good. Like, if you had to, the Stafford thing makes me a little nervous, like grabbed his back kind of in that Eagle game. And in the second half, he kind of wasn't the same. It was like, God, did he tweak something? I just think Seattle is a team that's going to be heard from as the season. The other thing, depending on the opponent, like a lot of people from Washington live in this area. Mm-hmm. And it wouldn't shock me at all. I don't know if it's going to be like a Niner takeover, but this Arizona can be when these Midwest teams come here, a team like Seattle and the 49ers, you get a lot of fans. So I don't know if it's quite a home game, but it won't just be like they're not going to Buffalo, and Thursday night, I always give the benefit of the doubt to the home team, but I don't know. I mean, that Arizona, that loss, pretty big kick in the what, losing kind of feels like one of the heartbeats of the organization. I can see this thing not spiral because they're not a bad team, but like they're probably destined to be 7-8 wins.
Okay, let's go Seahawks. We are in agreement there. Okay, next up, it is the Micah Parsons revenge game. The Green Bay Packers looking to bounce back. They're favored by 7 in Dallas versus the Cowboys that look like the same old Cowboys last week. CeeDee Lamb going down really did throw them off against the Bears. And you like the Packers to bounce back and cover that number of 7.
Yeah, I think part of it is that, right? I mean, the reports are he's going to miss several games, 3 to 4, out potentially a month. This is a team that offensively, the only chance they have is to put up a lot of points. One, it's going to be hard to do against the Green Bay Packers because their defense is awesome, and they're missing their best offensive weapon. I'll give Jerry credit. George Pickens has been a solid pickup, but I just think losing CeeDee Lamb, you can now focus all your attention on Pickens. Javonte Williams is a nice story, but he's not going to kill you. And listen, I might have been too harsh on Sunday night calling Matt Eberflus the worst defensive coordinator in the league. And clearly they don't have great players. But anytime guys are just wide open, play after play after play, that means the coach to the players, there is a gigantic disconnect. It's one thing to get beat. It's one thing to have a guy a couple yards behind him, but just guys wide open. I think Dallas, there's a communication issue where they don't have great players, but no one knows what's going on. So you get LaFleur, who was an excellent play caller, coming off like this is a week 2. If you're LaFleur, you kind of get to ride these guys pretty hard. So I think they're going to come out with kind of that early season fervor that they had, against the Lions and take it out on the Cowboys, who now with CD gone, their defense is just atrocious scheme wise, personnel wise. I could just see this being like a 23-0 bludgeoning, right? And the pass rush for the Packers going against that young offensive line. I can't get over because the Bears defense isn't good either.
No,
But you could feel it the moment CD went out. You're like, God, Dallas just doesn't have it, And I think defensively, I couldn't get over how big of a joke these guys were wide open. It's one thing like Diggs fell, okay, that happens, but the flea flicker took forever to materialize. Usually the guy, like last night, Goff, it took a little long, so he has to kind of do the check down guy. Caleb's like, no, and there's no one even around him. And then the touchdowns to Kmet, to DJ Moore, it's like, where are your defenders?
Yeah, I think all you need to know about the Dallas Cowboys defense is that they allowed Russell Wilson to throw for 450 yards just 2 weeks ago. Okay, before you go, I got to get your opinion on the biggest game of the week. The Ravens in Kansas City, favored by 2.5, John. It's crazy that one of these teams is going to be 1-3 after this game. The Ravens, by the way, 9-1 against the spread in games after an outright loss since the start of last season. What do you make of the matchup? Is there anything that you've seen out of the Chiefs this season that you like?
I do think Patrick Mahomes played pretty well, given who he's playing with. And I know people, it drives them nuts. Like, I know what I see. He's not his numbers. I think he's playing at a really, really high level. And, Thornton's kind of coming on. Here's the other thing. The only team that really kind of could corral Lamar, I guess the Steelers as well, but a couple years ago in that AFC Championship game, Spags had an excellent game plan against Lamar. And you just saw what happened of the guys kind of keeping their lanes, creating a net. I would expect them to somewhat duplicate that. And it's like, okay, Derrick Henry, are you going to run for 140 yards on us? Who also, I think the scary part about Henry is the fumbling problem is you can't even argue now. He has 3 fumbles in the last 45 carries, and he had 3 from 23 to 24 in the entire seasons. So it's clearly in his head. You saw the frustration last night. The one thing that benefits the Ravens, if they continue missing their top, front 7 guys in the 2 defensive linemen, I guess Van Noy's kind of like a hybrid outside rusher, outside linebacker, is the Chiefs aren't exactly going to play like the Lions and call run after run after run. So Andy likes passing. So I just think, are the Chiefs going to go to 1-3 at home? But this is a hungry Ravens team. This is going to be like 2 1-2 teams, but it is going to be it's going to be a physical game. The other thing, if you're Harbaugh, like we just got physically embarrassed, and we're going to play a team that is real. The one thing with the Chiefs, they're much more of a defensive physical team. I just think I like the Chiefs in this spot at home. But, I don't expect the Ravens to just fall apart. So they're going to have to make plays in the secondary, which they did not do. The Ravens didn't do, obviously, against the Lions. So it's like, are they going to corral Thornton on some of the big plays he's been making? The Kelsey thing's kind of interesting, right? He's washed, feels a little strong, but he's clearly a shell of himself relative to the Hall of Fame guy. But these are the type games where he can kind of be a throwback. Like, can he give you 7 for 70 and a touchdown? Because that's the type of stuff that the Chiefs are going to need to win this game. And I think he can, Chris Jones kind of picks the spots now. Like, I would expect Chris Jones to be good in this game, kind of a primetime player. When they play random teams like the Raiders or whatever, he just kind of cruises. But you say, hey, Chargers Sunday night, Ravens at home, game of the week, boom. Like, I would expect Chris Jones to be making plays. And I say the same thing for Travis. There are a couple times during the season, and this is a spot, like, I don't think it was random that Andy, went after him because he's kind of their energy guy. And who even knows? I haven't even seen it described. Like, was it a specific screw up? Was he just yelling at him to get him going? And Travis, I actually think that's one of the healthier moments. Like, Travis, you go after a guy that can handle it, and it kind of sparked him. It got him going. And even Andy said at the halftime, we need some juice. And I think they kind of got their juice in the second half. The Giants are good. At least were playing well on defense in that game. So I do think the Chiefs got a little momentum coming into this game. And at home, that place is going to be going nuts.
Lit a fire under is a second consecutive home game where the Chiefs will be an underdog. I don't think that's ever happened in the Patrick
Well, they're
Mahomes
clearly
era.
not viewed right now, right? They're viewed much more like a 9-10 win team than
Yeah.
the 15-win team we saw last year. Like I think they get respect. Like their lines aren't crazy big, but they're not viewed like a juggernaut in the peak of their dynasty currently
Yeah.
by the gambling people.
And I think that's fair. We'll see where we're at in a couple
Agreed.
of weeks with them when they get a couple of weapons back. Okay, John, we'll leave it at that for today. Great spot today. Thanks as always for joining. Best of luck with all your bets this weekend, and we'll catch you again next week.
See you.